Okay, hello. Hey everyone, how you doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful Wednesday night. So, this is one of those things that I've been wanting to talk about since it came out, which was the interview that Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan did with the Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman. This came out about 2 weeks ago. It was January 6th, and it is balls to the wall insane. It's absolutely bananas. The thing about it is that the reason why I wanted to do a stream on this, basically a reaction kind of stream. That's what this is going to be. So if you're not into those sort of reaction things, I don't know, that's what this is today. Um, the reason why I wanted to kind of review this and get my reaction on it is because it's a very good example of what happens when people um, get too sucked in too far into conspiracy theories, right? Um, but before we get into that, let me show you what we are drawing tonight. We're still working on our hideous hell demon person. Um, So last week we did last Monday or Saturday actually we put all these tentacles in the mouth and stuff. And I think we'll continue on with something like that. We'll just add some more of the body and then maybe how things go, maybe we'll add other limbs or something. So just be slowly chipping away at this over the next couple streams. But anyway, yeah. So one thing you'll see is that this guy Chansley, the QAnon shaman, right? He's not um an unintelligent person. Okay, he actually seems to be rather well, pretty intelligent. Like when you hear him talk, the guy speaks cleaner and better than I do. That's for sure. You don't see a lot of ums and ahs like, when the dude's talking, right? Seems to know what and he seems to have, he speaks with conviction, seems to know what he's talking about. It's just the problem is the things that this guy is saying are just like balls to the wall, like banana sandwiches nuts. That's really the only way to describe it. So, let me see here. Let me put it down and here's the link to it if you guys want to watch this on your own also. I definitely encourage it if you've never seen Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan. He used to have a channel called All Gas No Brakes, and then he sort of like broke off into his own. So definitely the guy's awesome. He'll do stuff like he'll go to like Trump rallies, and then he'll go to like he has one where he went to like a you know what do you call those fucking guys? The He went to like a pickup artist convention, and just like he just searches out the most extreme people, right? He went to like a QAnon like kind of thing and stuff like that, and just talks to just complete and total wackaloons. And the cool thing about it is that like he just lets them say whatever the hell they want, and it's awesome. It's awesome and it's hilarious, and it's actually kind of informative when you watch some of his interviews. So I definitely recommend checking out his channel if you've never heard of him. Um, but anyway, yeah, getting back to the stream here, yeah, this guy Chansley is not stupid. He like you would expect, the usual stereotype of a conspiracy theory kind of person, tinfoil hat wearing wackaloon that his mind is so open that his brain falls out. Yeah, I guess you could say Chansley kind of falls into that a little bit, right? But you're gonna find that, at least I found that he really isn't that different than the multitude of other people I've spoken to that believe in roughly the same kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like he's not a special case. He's not like a prime example of someone who's schizophrenic or something. You know what I mean? He's not like mentally ill or anything like that. Even though that was actually his lawyer tried to do that as part of his defense. There was a story about that, how this guy Chansley, his lawyer, basically went to the judge and said, "Hey, my my client is like mentally ill, go easy on him. And that didn't work. Um, the Qannon Shaman actually got 41 months in prison, right? So what does that come out to, like 4.5 years or something like that? And so far, he's been the person who's gotten the most jail time. Or I think so. There might be a guy who got 5 years, but I know that pretty soon there's actually were some people that were charged with sedition and stuff like that. The a couple of the 3%ers and stuff and the Oath Keepers, those guys have been charged with sedition and they're facing like 10, 20 years. So who knows? But yeah, and it's kind of like he was sort of like the public face of the 611 or 61 or sorry 16 insurrection, right? And but yeah, it's I just think it's fascinating. Like to listen to this, this interview I think is rather fascinating. And you're gonna, you'll see that he's not really completely insane. He's just a good example of a person who's just been completely radicalized, right? And another thing that you'll see is that the dude is not like a goose stepping white supremacist, although he does have a little bit of that kind of white entitlement going. You'll find some of that in the interview too, right? Sort of that, that kind of like, oh, I can't understand, I'm not racist kind of thing. I have black friends. Like you'll see that in the interview also. So, but that's just, I mean, that's like incredibly common stuff. You know what I mean? That's a thing that like literally millions of people around the country have that same sort of white entitlement. So he's, what I'm trying to say is like the dude isn't like a goose stepping Nazi or anything like that. He just, was in believed the right kind of his beliefs just intersected with theirs in just the right way to where he ended up throwing in with their side, right? And it's a good example of how it can happen to anybody. So, Pony Throat, hey, thank you for joining. Um, this guy Chansley, no, I don't think he got released. Is that who you're talking about? Yeah, I think Chansley is in prison for, you know, pretty sure that he went to prison for like 4.5 years. Unless you must be unless you're thinking about somebody else. I don't know. Let me know. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the interview here. I want to it's kind of yeah, it's about 44 minutes. We might skip some of it. Some of the stuff in the beginning is just sort of him bullshitting about spirituality and shit like that. But let's go ahead and get this on the road. And let me know if you can't hear it because you should be able to hear it, but if you can't, let me know. Here we go.
Free call from
Jacob Chansley.
an incarcerated individual at Alexandria Detention Center. This call is not private. It will be recorded and may be monitored.
All right, let's skip ahead on some of this stuff.
Jail. I've never experienced night, and that's pretty much where I'm sitting all day as well.
Wait,
Are we good?
There we go.
Yeah, we're good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay, brother. I'm doing okay. Spent the last 20-something hours in a cell, so, but at least I had something to work on.
Right. So for those who don't know, where are you at right now?
Oh, I am in Alexandria Detention Center in Alexandria, Virginia. I am sleeping on a 1.5-inch foam mat that is on top of a concrete slab every night, and that's pretty much where I'm sitting all day as well. I get 22 hours in my cell and 2 hours outside of my cell. There's no going outside or working out.
Yeah, that usually what happens when one goes to prison, right? It is, of course, bad to hear that conditions in the prison are horrible, but that is sort of the idea, right? When you go to jail, it's not supposed to be a good time, like, I mean, I don't know. If it was up to me personally, I would never subject anyone to that kind of torture, I personally think it's like one step above torture to keep somebody locked in a cell for 22 hours a day. That's pretty fucking bad. But, this is kind of the entire point of going to jail. So, I don't know. I mean, that's a thing that we saw with all of these, like the 1/6 rioters and stuff like that. You see all these stories about how they're like, oh, they're being mistreated and all that, and then like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene made it part of their like, political frickin' um mission to go like, protest for these guys. Like there was a story that came out where like they tried to pull some stunt where Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz tried to like walk into the prison unannounced. Like they just showed up with a camera crew, and then when the prison turned them away, like they tried to make that a big deal, like, see, they're being held, they're political prisoners and all that shit. And it's like, no, you can't just go to a prison without asking with a camera crew and start talking to people, like even if you are a fucking senator. So it's really kind of like, on the one hand, like you have these people that are in jail and jail sucks, and we should do the best we can as a society in order to like make the conditions within prison tolerable so that people don't like, so it's not so people aren't being tortured just by being there. That is something and that we should do as a society. But and then on the other hand, it's sort of like these people never gave a shit, like for all of these years, while you know why they care, because basically they're white conservatives. That's why they care. Right? That's why they care. That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene is going down to the prison, and Matt Gaetz is going there and calling these people political prisoners. They don't give a shit about the people who are already in prison. You know, they just care about like, these are our people here. It's just another example of like fucking bullshit tribalism. Anyway, going on.
or anything like that. This place can definitely take its toll on you. It makes me think of the saying in Shawshank Redemption when Red said, "In prison, a man will do most anything to keep his mind occupied." Yeah, I know how that is.
Right. How would you describe the conditions of the jail that you're in right now?
Well, the conditions in Alexandria are in the detention center are not as bad as they were in, say, the D.C. jail. I've never experienced like real racism and prejudice in my life until I went to the D.C. jail. There was a black woman from Nigeria that was like their nurse or their doctor that was examining me while I was fasting for 11 days because they weren't feeding me organic. She thought I was a racist and a white supremacist and all this crap.
Yeah, did you hear that? So that was the story that came out too. He went on a hunger strike because they wouldn't give him organic food, right? Which is, yeah, it would be nice. Prisoners, in a perfect world, if a prisoner, somebody in prison wanted an organic diet, they should get it, right? I don't see anything wrong with that, but this is prison. It's prison. You're not supposed to get what you want in prison. When you're in prison, they don't have to accommodate, your dietary, like, you know what I mean? Like, is it a religious reason, right? Like they have to accommodate that, you know. Like if you're Jewish or if you're Muslim and they're serving pork chops that night, they have to make accommodations for that. But just because you're like a vegan, or something like that, or you do organic, no, fuck you. You shouldn't have committed the crime. Like, this is prison, motherfucker. Like, you'll eat what they give you, and you'll fucking like it. Like, that's kind of, and that just, just an example there of that sort of like what I was talking about, that like white conservative entitlement, you know? So let's just rewind that a little bit here, a few seconds.
How would you describe the conditions of the jail that you're in right now?
Well, the conditions in Alexandria are in the detention center are not as bad as they were in, say, the D.C. jail. I've never experienced like real racism and prejudice in my life until I went to the D.C. jail. There was a black woman from Nigeria that was like their nurse or their doctor that was examining me while I was fasting for 11 days because they weren't feeding me organic. She thought I was a racist and a white supremacist and all this crap because she believed what was on the mainstream Mockingbird media. And when I told her that I was not racist, that I was not white supremacist whatsoever, that I've actually, dated all sorts of women of all sorts of races, I've had all sorts of friends of all sorts of races, and I said, I've even dated several black women. She said, I can't believe a black woman would ever date you.
Yeah. So he just used the I have a black friend defense. You hear that all the time, if you've ever encountered that before, like somebody says, "Oh, I'm not racist. My best friend is black. Some of my best friends are black." Right? And it's just sort of like, "Yeah, man, you know, true, but you can still be racist and have a black friend." right? You could still be racist and date a black woman. That doesn't mean you're not racist. It's and it's kind of an excuse is what that is. It's an excuse to not examine one's behavior. Whenever somebody says that, it's like, well, I can't possibly be racist, or why would I be friends with this guy? Well, that doesn't change the fact that the shit you're saying or the shit you're supporting, you know, has like is like filled with like prejudice and bias, Like why would a black woman who works for the police, why would she think that this guy who got arrested breaking into the Capitol was possibly a white supremacist? Why would she think that? What possible reason would she have to think that? I mean, could it be the literal thousands of racists and white supremacists that were actually at the Capitol that day? Right? I mean, it's kind of like, you people say things like guilt by association, right? But if you go, to a fucking white supremacist rally and you believe the same shit that they fucking believe, and you're standing right next to them as they break down the door and beat up police officers and shit like that, kind of hard to deny that you're part of that group, is it not? You know what I mean? Like if you went to, let's say you went to a BLM rally. Okay, let's just turn it around. Let's turn it around and use an example from the left. Okay, let's say you go to a BLM rally and you're doing your march and your whatever, blah, blah, blah. You're marching and you guys are chanting shit like that. Then a bunch of people come and they smash up a Starbucks that's right down the street, right in front of you. Right, and they start like assaulting people and they start trying to like light the building on fire and stuff like that. Now, what do you do? Do you just do nothing? Do you just let them get away with it? Or do you try to stop them? Do you move away from them? What do you do? It almost kind of becomes like, it's almost behooving upon you to try to stop those people, right? And that's exactly what we saw in BLM protests. People would be protesting peacefully. A bunch of guys would come up, start fucking like vandalizing some shit, and the actual BLM protesters would try to stop them. You know, um, a lot. And it actually, I've seen hundreds of those videos. Right around the time BLM, like all those protests were really big. Hundreds of videos of like guys dressed up in masks and shit going and like vandalizing shit. There was one where I remember right. Where somebody went and started like smashing up the windows on a Pep Boys, and this like kid with a pizza was like following him around and being like, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop that!" Right? And it turns out the guy that fucking did that was a cop, right? Like, you know what? We could look that up right now. We can look that up because that's actually true shit. BLM cop Pep Boys. You know, let's see here. We're having conflict, shooting killed. See, BLM protesters who let you burn cop car face up. Shit. You know what? And all right, I'll find it later. But definitely distinctly remember seeing that video, and it turned out that the guy that did that was a fucking like agent provocateur and shit, right? So it's sort of like, yeah, man, it's kind of like, if it walks like a duck, right? If it walks like a duck and it shits like a duck, then guess what? It's a fucking duck. So if you break into the fucking Capitol with a bunch of like, Oath Keepers and Proud Boys and Three Percenters and a bunch of other sort of right wing, you know, fucking alt right assholes, then don't get like surprised and shit when people think you're part of them. Seriously, man. Like, I don't know. Anyway, moving on.
And I was like, oh my God, like this woman is like being openly racist, because if the roles were reversed and she were standing in the doorway while a white nurse told a black guy, I can't believe a white woman would ever date you, she would be appalled. She doesn't know what my ethnic background is.
Yeah, that's also, you know, not the same kind of thing, right? What he just described there, that's not really comparable to the kind of racism that minorities face, you know? Like, I mean, yes, what he just said, that is technically racist. It is bigoted, but it's not like that's not a systemic issue that is going to affect his life in pretty much any way whatsoever. The personal opinion of a black woman who said, "I don't know why anybody would want to date you," right? Like, I mean, that's not the same fucking thing as the types of damaging, life-threatening racism that millions of people in this country face every day. And that's just that's kind of an example of what I mean by like that sort of like, you know, white entitlement, right? Like it's like you can dish it out, but you sure can't take it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things like I bet this guy just went his entire life, like you just said, oh, I've never experienced racism before. He even said that earlier in the interview, right? Well, what did you think it was like? You never experienced it before, so you never really had to think about it. Well, now it happens to you. All of a sudden, now you know how fucking unjust it is, right? Maybe if you would have like spent some more of your like life prior to going to prison in like reading about this kind of stuff and standing up against it, you wouldn't be experiencing it right now, right? You probably wouldn't because you wouldn't be in prison. So, anyway, let's move on.
She doesn't know I got Native American blood in me. She doesn't know, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
She has
wait,
no
wait.
idea.
Did you hear that? Let's go back a few inches.
Standing in the doorway while a white nurse told a black guy, "I can't believe a white woman would ever date you," she would be appalled. She doesn't know what my ethnic background is. She doesn't know I got Native American blood in me. She doesn't know, you know what I'm saying? She has
Ah, you have Native American blood in you. Uh-huh. Starting to sound familiar, right, folks? I know many, many, many people that have this same kind of basically delusion, right? There is some very not nice words with that to describe them, which are a border on racial slurs, so I won't say it. But yeah, this sort of like, you get like people who they're very interested in like Native American spirituality, stuff like that, especially like New Ager types, right? And you find that it's like, they certain, like white people who are very proud of the one ancestor that they have from like 300 years ago. And it's not hard to find, especially if your family's been in the United States for like a long time. It's not hard to find an ancestor who is Native American. That's not a hard thing to find at all because, people like to have sex, right? And it's like if your family's been here for long enough, chances are you're gonna have ancestors and relatives from all over the place of all different races and colors and creeds and whatnot. You know, Apparently I myself have some Native American ancestry, like 187th of a certain tribe or something, going back 300 years or whatever. you know so it's like not really uncommon at all, but some people find this, they find an old Bible with a family tree in it or whatever, and they go, oh, my great 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 grandfather was half Cherokee or some shit, and suddenly they're like running around with a headdress, right, going to sweat lodges and shit, and it's like just a little bit, I don't know, disingenuous. Like, I don't believe very much in cultural appropriation. I tend to believe that cultural appropriation is bullshit, you know, and that's a discussion for another time. But if you could classify anything as cultural appropriation, this is it. This is it right here. The tendency for middle class, spiritually starved white people to consume Native American religion, right? And cultural, like, you know, acutements. But the thing is, it's like they never actually learn about the actual culture or the actual religion. Not really. Right? They never actually take the time to study the shit and go visit the reservations and stuff like that, and learn from people. Then they never actually do any of that stuff. They just like to wear the clothes and meditate and shit, and like that's it, and come up with a spirit animal name, right, and then maybe like smoke weed. Like that's really what they like to, that's really it. And it's kind of like this sort of thing. It's like part stoner, part like would-be conservative evangelical. Like it's like the people who didn't end up going to church and becoming part of like Pat Robertson's moral majority, like ended up like hanging out in sweat lodges and like rubbing power crystals and shit. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I mean, who am I to insult someone's religion, even if it is like weird new age stuff? Believe what you want to believe. I'm totally cool with that. It's just doubly like weird and bizarre when you're citing these beliefs and shit as a like reason to like try to overthrow the government. At least I think. Kunga Dory, his spiritual beliefs are okay with me, but his political and adrenochrome is way out there. Yeah, we'll come to the adrenochrome. Anyway, but yeah, the point I'm making with all of this is that we've all met someone like this before, right? I mean, I certainly have. I don't know, I've certainly met many, many, many people like this before. And it really kind of disturbs me to see that how easily someone like him, someone that you would normally consider to be most likely a pretty peaceful guy, would allow himself to become radicalized and end up, you know, unwittingly breaking into the Capitol and trying to fucking overthrow the country. Very, very, it's a lesson to us all as about how we should fight against this shit. Let's move on.
Has no idea, but she's judging me by the color of my skin. There was also a guy, a guard over there that wore a Black Lives Matter mask. He was taunting the Trump supporters and, like harassing them and, messing with them and stuff.
I didn't.
Also Black Lives Matter. Yeah, let's, see, you can kind of see, like we said before, oh, he's not racist, but kinda, sorta is. There you go, right there. That's a very popular sort of mantra among the right wing. This idea that it's like, oh, Black Lives Matter, they're the real racists, right? We really shouldn't forget um, how much the BLM movement really scared the living crap out of, conservatives, right? Especially the people that live in suburbs who are far, far away from the actual Black Lives Matter protests. Right? We really can't we can't forget those people and how the movement just literally gave them fucking nightmares, you know, because they're listening to, Fox and One American Network and all these other places just scream and moan and cry about how like the entire world is burning down, right? Even though that is not what happened at all in the slightest. We really, really should not forget about that. Um, it is very much, Black Lives Matter has been demonized to the point to, especially for people who run in the same circles as this guy, this QAnon guy, it has been very much demonized to the point where it's like you just have to say the word BLM and they like lose their fucking minds, right? It's synonymous with, you know, cultural Marxist like commie takeover. Right? So it's that's it has firmly found a place in the conspiracy theory mythology, right? As like a method by which the communists are going to try to take over the United States. It's kind of utterly ridiculous, but anyway, let's move on.
I didn't know you had a Native American in you.
Yeah, that's something that I found out somewhat recently, actually, when I talked to my grandmother of my father.
Move ahead. Move
I
ahead.
can't play card games with anybody because I'm in the cell 22 hours a day, and when I come out of my cell, I'm the only one out of my cell.
So you got sentenced to 41 months. How do you feel about that sentence?
I don't think it's fair. If that's what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they thought an example had to be made, and I don't think they anticipated that example being a double-edged sword.
So you hear that? Hear what this guy's saying here? He thinks he was made an example, right?
Where They tried to make an example out of me, but in the process they made it clear to the American people that the justice system is not fair or balanced.
What do you mean by that?
See, so you hear what this guy's saying here? It's like, oh, it's not fair. They made an example of me, whatever, right? Kind of, sort of like, it's almost like he doesn't understand that what he did was wrong at all, right? Like, not a lot in the way of remorse. Doesn't really sound like he's actually sorry. Doesn't sound like that he's done much in the way of actual soul searching as to, oh, gee, how did I end up in this situation, right? Kind of sounds like he's very, very defiant. Thinks that he's in the, he's in the right. It was right of him to break into the Capitol, try to basically murder some senators and the vice president. Because let's not forget, right? This person sounds like he's pretty nonviolent, right? Let's not forget the entire point of QAnon, right, is the storm. The entire point of the storm is to murder all of the Democrats. That's what QAnon is, right? That's what QAnon is. It's basically let's just remove that bot. Okay. It's to murder Democrats. That Donald Trump was going to take over the country and they were going to have public executions of anybody who stood in his way, which, would be justified because they're all supposedly pedophiles or whatever, baby Satan, baby killing, blood drinking pedophiles, and that's why it was okay to murder. But that was the point. That was the point of QAnon, was to murder them, to have public executions, to get, not just lock Hillary Clinton up, and John Podesta and Barack Obama and everybody else. It wasn't just to throw them in jail, it was to actually have televised executions, right? And give them what they deserved and shit like that. That was the whole fucking point. So, yeah, let's, and he thinks, oh, well, for my part in this, it's not fair. Oh, okay. I'm being made an example of because you went to the fucking Capitol to murder people, right? And even if you yourself personally, Jacob Chansley, was not, had no intention of actually hurting anybody, right? You were in the same forums, you read the same literature, you read the same fucking Q drops, and you saw the same uh, um, comments of all the violent people that were there. You saw all the people breaking in, right? People fighting police officers, shit like that. Cops losing fingers, right? And people dying, right? You saw all of that shit and you were totally fucking fine with it. And you still think that, oh, I'm being made an example of. Yeah, they should have thrown his ass away. See, this is why I don't have any sympathy for these people at all. Like zero. There's some people that are like, oh, these people, they were manipulated, shit like that. The real person we got to get is Trump, and that's true. The real person who should be in prison should be Donald Trump, and fucking like all of his cohorts who actually like tried the real coup that was going on simultaneously while like I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the you know congressional investigation on this shit where they just like basically uncovered the whole fucking coup plot. Thinking we might talk about that a little more on Saturday, right? Because it's getting kind of crazy, with fake electors and all that shit. They definitely deserve to be in prison, but so does this guy. So does this guy because he was right along with them. And if they would have found Nancy Pelosi in there, if they would have found, Chuck Schumer in there, right, or any senators whatsoever, even if they would have found Mike Pence, he'd be dead. They'd be dead right now. They would have been lynched and like dragged outside and beaten to death by a fucking angry mob. So yeah, dude, 5 years or 4.5 years or whatever, it's not long enough, right? I mean, seriously, not in my fucking opinion. Anyway, so yeah, man. So what would he think? What would make it fair, right? I mean, the fuck out of here. What would make it fair is that if his ass like was never allowed to, I don't know, shit, 10 years, right? In other countries, he would have got a lot worse for the kind of crime that he committed. He would have got a lot worse than 4 years. Let's put it that way. Moving on.
That, you know, there was a guy that threatened to shoot Pelosi in the head, and he brought 2 guns and a bunch of ammo, and he got 28 months. I never threatened to hurt anybody. I never vandalized any property. I never hurt anybody. I didn't assault anybody. I didn't steal anything. You know, WTF, mate.
Yeah, dude, but you were right there next to him. That's the thing, right? Oh, there was a guy there gonna shoot Pelosi, right? Right next to you. Well, did you fucking think about that when you like were breaking into the goddamn building with this guy? Right? Did you think about that? Oh, hey, there's a bunch of violent fucking psychopaths here. These guys dressed up in like army fatigues and shit like that. There's people out there beating the shit out of cops. Oh, I'm a peaceful man. I'm peaceful. I didn't do any of this stuff. Did you fucking think about like, hey, how does this look? Maybe I'm aiding and abetting these people. No, man, he didn't think about it at all, right? Because he's got that fucking conservative white person entitlement where it's like it's not wrong when I do it, right? That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. You know, it's very similar to the Karen phenomenon. You know what I mean? This, you know, you see all these Karen videos and stuff now. That's not a new thing either. With all of the, you know, middle-aged people, and they're not just all white. You know, there are plenty of you know, everybody who's just acts this way. You know, is classified as a Karen, right? But still, you know, this idea of just middle-aged like fucking people who think they're entitled and you know, yell and scream and cry and act like little fucking like barbarians and shit when they don't get what they want. Right? That's what it is. It's like, oh well, Jacob Chansley wanted to see the elections manager and got his ass thrown out of the fucking, you know, Capitol building. Yeah, man, I don't have a lot of sympathy. No sympathy at all. Sorry. He deserves to be in fucking prison. Right? Everybody who broke into the Capitol that day, they all deserve to be in prison. What about Baked Alaska? Did he get arrested? You know, Baked Alaska. He's like a white nationalist YouTuber guy that was like live streaming from the fucking Capitol. Did they throw his ass in prison too? They should. You know, I think he got away. I think they haven't actually like arrested him yet or whatever, which is bullshit. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, moving on.
Right. So why do you think they picked you to make an example out of?
Because I think that I became a symbol, not just so much of January 6th, but because I became a symbol for freedom, a face for freedom of sorts. And, you know, I stood out the most, to say the least. And I think I energized a lot of people, not just in the United States, but all over the world, to stand up for their freedoms as well.
Yeah, yeah. See, this is what he really. Yeah, okay. He thinks he's fucking Gandhi. All right, there you go. Okay. Oh, I stood up for freedom. Yeah, right. Freedom to what? Freedom to murder your elected representatives when you lose the election? That's what really was going on there, right? Freedom to what? Try to overthrow the government because of some shit you read on 4chan, you know? Says that there's you know, like Satan baby raping fucking you know, senators and shit in the basement of Comet Pizza when there's no actual fucking basement there. This is what you're talking about? What fucking freedom are you talking about here? What is that? You know, and that's the thing about it. It's like, you know, if this whole like I can picture QAnon followers at home listening to this and just sort of like seething in anger, thinking how it's all so unfair. And oh, this guy didn't deserve that. Look at him. He's fighting for freedom. He's trying to uncover the conspiracy, blah, 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 blah. It's like, man, what the fuck happened to my country? Right? People like this, you know, like used to be the village kook that would never, like, I don't know. I think there's a reason why shit like this never happened in the past, you know, and it was because I really do think it's like this is the downside to the internet, to mass communication, you know, for the ability for anybody to spread their ideas around and have it catch on the same. You know, maybe society was better off a little bit when we didn't have that. When every crazy fucking person in the world couldn't just like write some shit and have it be seen by millions and millions of people. You didn't have like ridiculous like memes and shit like this flying around the country, you know, or rather you did, but the spread was much, much slower because it involved, physical media. And you actually had to have money in order to print stuff up and get on the airways, shit like that. You know what I mean? You couldn't just like, like every fucking like wackaloon, couldn't just like post some shit from his toilet on his phone and like, you know, radicalize an entire country. Maybe that's I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in humanity to be able to get through this phase of you know, this dangerous phase in our development. So moving on.
How do you feel about the nickname QAnon Shaman?
Well, it's not anything I ever asked for. It's one that was given to me by Alex Jones.
Alex Jones gave you that nickname?
He's the one that called me the Qannon Shaman for the very first time when
Yeah,
I did an interview with him.
I don't doubt
believe
that
on
at
the
all.
8th of January.
Damn. So it just caught on from there?
Yeah,
Maybe you're not QAnon Shaman, but you are a shaman, right? And you also...
I do practice shamanism. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me more about what shamanism means to you?
All right, so we'll go ahead and skip a few of this because basically he just for the next about 5 minutes just kind of waxes poetic about a bunch of spiritual bullshit that really doesn't matter. And, you know, not really, but one thing I'd want to say about that though is like, I mean, I'll leave this part for you guys to watch by yourselves, right? But one thing I will say about this part is that he kind of believes like in everything, is what it sounds like, right? I had a girlfriend like that once, years and years ago. Like this is like in the 90s, and 90s up to around 2003. Actually, no, we met in 2001, and yeah, up for a few years. Anyway, um, and she was, into this new age shit. She was into things like sweat lodges and all that kind of stuff, right? Actually dragged me along to a few of them. I didn't really get much out of them. I'm not very much of a spiritual person. Um, and the thing about it is that she believed in everything. So she didn't just believe in like Native American stuff. She believed in ghosts and she believed in chakras and she believed in, you know, um, psychic powers, right? And like meditating and she believed in reincarnation and she believed in fucking power crystals and just like all of this shit put together, like everything. And it's like, okay, this is when I really kind of started to like, you know, understand that it's not really about spiritualism to anybody. It's not about like, you know what I mean? It's more of just all like an act, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you really believe, like, let's say that, because there are some people who are like, say, Wiccan, right? And if you're like a Wiccan person, what do? You study Wicca, right? You actually learn about it. You sit back, you read a bunch of books, you get into the philosophy and you learn about the history of it and all that stuff. And you actually learn about the god or the goddess or whatever that you're going, that you invoke, right? You actually, it is in your interest if you're going to be, say, a Wiccan, is that you would want to learn about Wicca, right? Same thing, if you're just a pagan of any stripe, you know what I mean? Some people are into pagan religions and stuff like that. And what do? You learn about it. Just the same way that if you were a Christian, and if you really were a Christian and you really believed in it, then it behooves you to actually learn as much as you can about it. Isn't that right? People do that. Muslims do that. Muslims like in the Middle East and stuff like, are highly, highly educated when it comes to their religion. People that go to madrasas and shit like that. Like they'll straight up like memorize the Quran, like from cover to cover, shit like that. You know what I mean? Because if you're going to believe something like this, then you should know about it. Wouldn't you say? Well, these people, the new age people, don't really go for that, from what I understand. They don't. It's something I've observed, right? It's not really about learning anything. It's all about how you feel and what makes you feel good and what, so they basically believe shit that makes them, you know, makes them feel good. And they don't actually learn about any of it. And it's very easy for these people to fall into things like conspiracy theories and wacky beliefs. You know, these are the people that believe in shit like Atlantis and like fucking, the moon is fake, right? And then they'll do stuff like, they'll believe in the flat earth, or they'll do like urine therapy, right? Or stuff like that. And it's very easy for such people to fall into dangerous beliefs, like anti-vax kind of beliefs, right? Or another one that I saw was called breatharianism. The people that actually like believe that you don't need to eat food, right? Breatharianism, right? I think is what it is. And it's like this spiritual practice where you don't eat and you just like breathe deeply and get sunlight, and you're supposed to like just create energy, like kind of like how plants through photosynthesis and shit, right? It's supposedly just through oxygen and getting sunlight on your skin that you can like create food. And it's bullshit. Like, you ever see those videos of like people doing yoga and then trying to pretend that they have like energy chi fields, and then there'll be like a guy like supposedly doing kung fu and like just waving his hands and making people fall over, and then like someone will try it, and you'll see these videos of people like running at them at full speed on the beach, and then like the lady of course doesn't actually really have a chi field because that shit doesn't exist, and she gets clobbered. Like, look up search for fake martial arts on YouTube. There's like an entire like subgenre of these sort of like these like wannabe guru charlatans who are basically just tricking people into thinking they have superpowers. Right? And it's all bullshit. And these are the kinds of people that fall for shit like that. And it can lead to dangerous fucking things. It's like, man, I don't know, man. It's dangerous. Anyway, Inshoma, hey, what's going on, man? Let's move on a little bit. Okay. Shit, we're at 9:18 already. And okay, I do want to get into this a little bit, but we're going to skip ahead. We're going to pass, because all of this whole section, what is a shaman? We're going to pass all that, and we're going to go right to what catalyzed you to get involved in politics at 11:50. All right.
What catalyzed you to uh, get involved in politics?
Well, that is a funny story. Let me start by saying that a fish does not know that it's swimming in water, okay? And a sane person in an insane society will appear insane. So that being said, everything I'm about to say, I ask people to keep an open mind and an open heart and try and understand that, where I'm coming from is a place that is, from literally thousands of hours of research.
Yeah, see, nice little caveat there. It's like, yeah, he kind of knows himself how batshit insane some of this shit sounds. So he's got to, got to give you a caveat there. Oh, it sounds nuts, but I'm the one who's really sane. A sane person in an insane world sounds insane. It's like, yeah, right, okay. And that's the thing about all this stuff, right? That's the thing about this, is that deep inside, I mean, unless the person is just truly like mentally ill, deep inside they know it's bullshit. That's the thing about it, right? The thing about with cult members, right? The thing with you know, COVID denialists and cult members and people who believe in extreme shit, you know what I mean? Flat Earth people, all of that stuff, right? 99% of them know that it's horseshit and that it's just like, a belief. And sometimes people get too caught up in it, and they like kind of go too far, and it's like, oh, I can't turn back now. I've invested too much time in this belief, right? The same kind of thing happens to people who get, who lose faith in religions or whatever. Like they get converted to a new religion, and then they get super into it for like a few years, and then doubts and shit start creeping in, and it's like, well, I've already kind of changed my entire identity to align with this, so I got to stick with it. And you'll have, there are literally thousands, if not millions of people, like for example, who go to church every Sunday, even people, even pastors and priests and stuff, who personally don't believe any of it. And they just go because this is part of their identity and their, in their social circle and all that. And to give it all up would be too much of a drastic change. Too many people would, give them shit over it. They'd end up losing too many friends and family members, crap like that. And it's like, so they just sort of live a lie, you know. And that's the thing about, about all of this stuff. It's not just the QAnon. It's like every like bizarre, wacky conspiracy theory, every like fringe belief, every like science denying fucking like, you know, um, theory, all of that shit. It's like they know it's bullshit. They know it's bullshit, and it's all about community, you know. People believe this stuff because there's a community around it of people, of like-minded individuals who will, give you that affirmation, right? And this is what they really mean. Whenever you hear somebody talk about a religion and how you have an empty place inside and God can fill that for you and all that, this is what they're really talking about. What they're really talking about is it's not really God that fills a spiritual void inside of your heart or whatever. Not really. It's what it really is the sense of community that one gets when, when you feel like wanted and you find a place that you feel like you belong, you know. And this is the same thing that people say draws them to extremist movements, white supremacist movements, right? People have that same feeling, when they join ISIS. The same fucking thing. It's the same thing you get when you join Scientology, when you join a cult. It all comes down to that. It all comes down to this need that everybody has. Everybody has it. This need of needing to belong to something, you know. It's not really that much different than belonging to a particular fandom. Just take a fandom, but then believe that instead of like My Little Pony or Marvel Comics or Godzilla or something, that you're actually believing in the creator of the universe. It's like the exact same fucking thing, right? It's the same feeling. It fills the same need in that we have the need for community and the need to feel like, you know, there are people out there that you can depend on. That's exactly what it is. So, anyway, moving on.
And I'm a very skeptical and rational person. And the only way I'm ever going to believe anything is if I've seen it from more than one angle and I've
All right,
heard it from more than one source.
let's rewind that a little bit because he says something I think is rather important right here, okay?
Sane person in an insane society will appear insane. So, that being said, everything I'm about to say, I ask people to keep an open mind and an open heart and try and understand that, where I'm coming from is a place that is, from literally thousands of hours of research. And I'm a very skeptical and rational person. And the only way I'm ever going to believe anything is if I've seen it from more than one angle and I've heard it from more than one source. And, dinged the little truth bell inside of my heart. So
Okay, what did he just say right there? Because that part is very important. What he just said, right? I'm a very rational person. I don't believe anything unless I see it from multiple angles, right? And it dings a little bell, and this is thousands of hours of research, right? And it dings a little bell in my heart. So that makes it sound like he's very well researched, doesn't it? I mean, if someone, that's what he just said. He said he's very well researched, that he spent thousands of hours researching things, right? In real life, that's complete and total bullshit. This guy didn't research any of this shit. Okay, because research to a conspiracy theorist is reading shit that you agree with. That's what it is, okay? Research from a conspiracy theorist is not, because what do you consider research, right? Going and actually reading books, right? Maybe reading a couple videos, maybe reading some papers on the thing, maybe getting some discussions going, right? Actually, like finding sources and finding the original source, like if you want to research something, like you don't just go and read a book about it, right? You read the book, you look at the footnotes, and then you go and you look at where that guy got the footnotes from, because the guy that the book that you're reading could be wrong. Maybe this dude quoted the footnote wrong, whatever. Maybe the footnote doesn't actually say that. That's how you really research something. You take it from multiple angles, and then you know, find the actual truth, which is going on. Is this thing that I'm reading, is it actually true? Is it all bullshit? Does it have a political agenda? Blah blah blah. No, that's not what this guy did. That's not what QAnon people, conspiracy theorists in general, do when they research things. What they really do, what he really means, is that he went on like a forum like Reddit or 4chan or something and just read some shit that somebody else posted, and then maybe had like, some back and forth and basically theorized about shit, speculated about things, and made shit up, right? And then it all fit the narrative. And the way that conspiracy theorists tell you if something is true or not is if it fits the narrative. That's what it is. Okay. It's not does it have sources? It's not, um right, is this information actually legit or not? And this is why you'll never win an argument with a conspiracy theorist by actually citing sources, citing the truth, right? Have you ever, I don't know if you've ever tried to do that. I mean, shit, even today, I tried to do it with a COVID denier on Reddit, and I know better. And I know he's not going to give a fuck, right? I actually, little side tangent, like I got in a little flame war with a dude on Reddit, a guy who actually does not, like, he doesn't believe viruses are real, like, and he said, oh, there's no actual images of viruses, they're not real, it's all bullshit. And so I went and found some images of the coronavirus, and said, here you go, here's some pictures of it. And he, of course, would not accept my evidence because he wanted a video. He wanted a video of the virus, and he wanted it to come from a university in the United States, right? Had to be a university within the United States that had to take a video of the actual virus moving. I'm like, viruses are fucking microscopic, right? Like, like you can't just point your cell phone at a virus and shit and get pictures of it, right? You can't just like get your fucking like, iPhone out and shit and zoom in real far. Like, no, that's not what happened. You have to use like electron microscopes and shit in order to get pictures of viruses because they're like fucking minuscule. They're even like tinier than like bacteria and like cells, and viruses are like incredibly tiny. It's like, I don't know, do they even have video of viruses? Does the technology exist to do that? I don't know if that's true or not. But this is how far the bar, like this guy set the bar, and it's because any evidence I would provide goes against his narrative. Even though like I go, okay, here's images of actual viruses, they do exist, the images, this goes against his narrative. No, because that's, this is what conspiracy theorists do. This is how they determine if something's true or not. And what this dude just said, and fucking the QAnon shaman just said, if it dings the little bell in my heart, then I know it's true. That's what he just said, right? It dings the bell in his heart if it agrees with his preconceptions. If it fits his narrative, then he knows it's true. And so keep that in mind. There is no research. Whenever these guys say I just spent thousands of hours research, no, he spent thousands of hours on 4chan and on Reddit and on Facebook and on Twitter going through fucking like QAnon drops and like theorizing with a bunch of other wackaloons about what it all means. Right? Very cool if it's a fucking AR, like, augmented reality game and shit for like the latest blockbuster, like, thriller movie or something. Not so much when you're trying, thinking about overthrowing the fucking government. Anyway, moving on.
So I always knew that DC was corrupt. And when I heard about Podesta's leaked emails to the public, I started to read them with a mild curiosity. Then I started to notice a very strange pattern in the emails and many of the other emails that were leaked, and how it involved most of the like some of the most powerful DC moguls, like Clintons and the Obamas and Bidens, and how it involved celebrities and international bankers. And The big picture became crystal clear.
Yeah, so he's referring to Pizzagate there. Like, so, I won't spend too much time on this. I basically did an entire stream on Pizzagate, last year. So, anyone who wants to see my thoughts on it, check that out. But Pizzagate is basically the, you know, precursor to QAnon, right? And that was when, John Podesta had some emails that got leaked where he was basically talking about how, like, hey, you guys want to come get some pizza, like, you want to come down to the pizza shop that we go to, because there was this place called Comet Pizza in, Washington D.C. that was very popular with the, with his office and stuff like that. And these people started just reading all of these weird like codes into it and shit, right? So they would like say stuff like, yeah, we want like a pizza with extra cheese, and they would think, oh, that means that they're gonna go kidnap children or something. Or if it's like a salad or salad with like, ranch dressing, that means we're gonna go get a 12-year-old. Like seriously, like it was very just people. And the thing is, it was all made up bullshit. People would do that. They would get these pictures, like John Podesta had pictures on Facebook and on like social media and stuff, and they just came up with all of these elaborate theories about what these pictures mean, when it was like literally they meant nothing. Like there was one where he was he had his hands up, and and it was like they created this ridiculous like mythology around all of it that was just utterly meaningless, and none of it had any basis in fucking reality. And, long story short, like I won't spend too much, like I said, I have a whole stream, but long story short, it ended up with a guy named Edgar Welch who showed up at the pizza place with a fucking gun, with a AR-15, and wanted to, go into the basement and save the children that he and all of his buddies spent so much time basically, convincing themselves were being held prisoner there, right? And it all turned out to be complete and total bullshit. 100% grade A baloney. There were no children there. There's not even a basement in the pizza place. And this dude shows up with a fucking gun, shoots it in the air, and like is waving it in people's faces and shit, you know, screaming about, hey, like, I'm here to save the children. And it's like there's not even a basement, you fucking idiot. This is what happens. This is what happens when, you know, people like this get together and nobody challenges them, I don't know. Is there a way to stop that? I mean, you can go and you can engage them. Maybe you can convince one or two people. Like maybe if there was someone there in these places, like, in these forums or on 4chan or something, like trying to talk these people down, saying, "Hey, this is bullshit," but you try to do that, they're just gonna ban you, right? If you try to go to any of these places and you try to like, and if you say anything that's against the narrative, like if you go to like a conspiracy theory sub on Reddit or something, like basically there actually is one. There's one called R Conspiracy. There's another one called Conspiracy Commons that I frequent, which is very much a fucking like anti-vax sub nowadays. That's all they fucking talk about, you know. But there's a few of them, and if you go to these places and you try to talk to people and you try to like convince them that this is all bullshit, right? They just basically first they pile on you, right? Ridicule you, then they threaten you, and then they ultimately ban you because you're not sticking with the narrative. You're going against the narrative, right? And that's the other thing about conspiracy theorists, right? Is anybody who doesn't like believe in the conspiracy theory is part of the conspiracy, right? That very much is a thing. If you don't, if you don't play ball, if you try to like say anything counter to it, then you're in on it, because obviously you must be in on it or else you wouldn't be trying to say things against it. And that's very much, the idea that evidence is the absence of evidence is evidence for the conspiracy. That is very much a thing, because obviously if there was really evidence for the conspiracy theory, then the people in charge of the conspiracy would be destroying the evidence, right? So the fact that there is no evidence means that the conspiracy theory must be true. And you see this everywhere. So the fact that there are no videos of the Earth being flat must mean that the Earth is actually flat because the powers that be went and somehow managed to like stop every person on Earth from taking a video of it. Right? You know, that must be the fucking like, that must be the explanation, obviously. And it's just, and it sounds ridiculous. When you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous and crazy. These are the people that we're actually dealing with. Ridiculous, crazy lunatics that are like, in this case with QAnon, like one step away from like fucking murdering people, you know? I mean, fuck. Just think about what could have happened on January 6th. Really think about what could have happened if people decided to show up armed, you know? Like, they came this time. They weren't armed, but we already know that it was like, like these Oath Keeper guys were basically just waiting for the signal. There was like an entire group of them armed to the teeth right on the other side of the river, just waiting for the phone call to show up with fucking like, rifles and shit and machine guns and everything to take over the goddamn country. And it's like, this is what happens, when these people become, radicalized like this. It's like, I never thought that would be a problem, like seriously, because I used to be really into this stuff. I know you guys probably can tell, right? I used to be really into conspiracy theories, but I never thought in my entire life that this community would actually be dangerous. I never thought these would be the people who would get radicalized. I always thought that when and if a fascist government tried to take over the United States, that the conspiracy theory people would be the first people to turn against it. I never thought that they would be the ones rooting the shit on, right? That they would be the ones actually supporting the fascists. That they would be the ones actually marching to install a fascist when he fucking lost the election. Because that's what actually happened, folks, on the 6th. I don't know. Oh, fuck. Let's read some comments here. We're at 9:38. Hmm. And Shoma, speaking on delusional entitlement common of Karens, we need to keep in mind that some, if not most, of what Q Shia is saying, the Q Shaman, is saying might be hyperbolic exaggeration to drum up sympathy, however undeserved. To be fair, though, the man dressed up like a rejected background creature extra in an episode of the Power Rangers, so he's probably getting a lot of grief from both sides. Yeah, I imagine that, yeah, I'm sure some of this is probably an exaggeration, but I don't know. Like I said at the beginning of the stream, though, the language he's speaking is language that I've heard before many times from spiritually like-minded people. You know what I mean? But yeah, I do imagine though that he probably is getting shit in prison. I know for a fact that, for example, like a lot of the right-winger people, like after this guy in particular, Jacob Chansley, got busted, a lot of them try to disavow him and say that, oh, this dude is actually like, part of BLM, like, and then they pulled up all these photos of him at like BLM rallies and stuff, but in real life, it was him at the rallies, but he was like a counter protester. He was like protesting with the police against BLM at all these rallies and stuff. So it's like they've definitely tried to disavow this dude. They've definitely tried to like, you know, um, push him off onto the left. It's like he himself is just not going for it. So I imagine in prison, he probably gets a lot of shit. Yeah. I imagine like, like when they're in the showers and stuff like that. Right? Like, I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that. Anyway, let's move on.
And it was not even a week or two later that the first Q drop appeared. All the research pointed to Q being the beginning of full disclosure. And I came to conclude that Q was involved at the highest levels of the military and the intelligence community. And that Q was involved with like things like the deep underground military.
Keep in mind, the Q drops were literally posts on 4chan. That's what the Q drops were, right? So when he said all the research matches up, all of the speculation that he and his friends did matches up. That's what it was. So, I did a stream on QAnon too also. We kind of know who Q was now. Like his name was I think Ron Watkins was his name, and he's like a IT guy that like ran 8chan, right? Pretty much has been outed as Q, although it's still like he's denying that it was him, but yeah, it was fucking him, right? Um, and it just turned out to just be one giant troll, you know. But yeah, remember that. Remember that Jacob Chansley here said that he spent thousands of hours researching things. And how do you spend thousands of hours researching a fucking tweet by like or by Donald Trump and then comparing that to like some shit some rando who you don't even know who they are said on 4chan? How do you spend thousands of hours doing that? You don't. You don't spend thousands of hours doing it, right? You spend an afternoon getting high and thinking up crazy shit and about how the conspiracy is like, oh fuck, this is some top secret dude releasing top secret information. Just look at that lamp in the background of that tweet. It's literally what the Q drops were. And this is what really gets me about QAnon is that it's like the dumbest fucking shit to just anybody who took 5 minutes to actually read through some of the Q drops and examine what they actually say. It's the stupidest shit like you could ever fucking think of. Like the dumbest shit. QAnon, like, they had stuff about how like how children were being like trafficked in IKEA cabinets. Like cabinets that you could buy from IKEA. Like, are you fucking serious? Like that's the stupidest fucking like it's like they weren't even trying. And I know for a fact, I mean, somebody out there, because we don't know who Q was, and we know that multiple people posted as Q, and, it was all a giant troll. And I could just, you can just sit there think, like, you can, like, almost see it. You can almost see, like, the guy in his basement thinking up, like, oh, wow, look what I'm going to make these motherfuckers believe next. And then, like, oh, yeah, I'll make them think that, hey, there's, like, people being trafficked in fucking cabinets that you could buy on the internet. Like, anybody could have bought one of those cabinets and got one and see if it came with a free child in the middle, like, so stupid. So it's embarrassing how stupid it was, and it makes me feel embarrassed because I believed this shit. I mean, I got out of conspiracy theories well before QAnon came along. I mean, you know, this was like, 15, almost 20 years ago when I was into conspiracy theories, but it was like, yeah, like right around the end of the Bush administration is when I got out of it, right? So what was that, 2008? Nah, probably a little before that. More like 2006 is when I like got out of conspiracy theories, but I can understand the mindset, right? And the thing is, if I was still into this shit when QAnon came along, I most likely could very much would have been alongside. So I understand. I have a little bit of sympathy, but not that much because you got to be a real fucking moron to believe this shit. Anyway, moving on.
Cases and black budget technologies and stuff like that above top secret information. And ultimately, Q involved the warring factions of the deep state, what some people have called the alliance versus the cabal. And then what we were experiencing was kind of like a mind war, and this mind war over the mind.
So what he's talking about there, by the way, that's the whole QAnon thing. This idea that there's warring factions within the government and all that. And it's basically the idea was it was like Trump and the military versus like the Democrats and the Illuminati is what it is. So you'll see lots of stuff about this in QAnon circles, about how like Trump in the military, they're going to have military tribunals and they're going to hold like Hillary Clinton and execute her in public. And then there's people that think it already happened. Like there's people who think like this has all happened and that the Hillary Clinton you see out there now is like a clone and that like Joe Biden is a clone, right? And that Trump is still actually really the president and Joe Biden is just a robot and Trump is like controlling him behind the strings or whatever, like behind the scenes, like the fucking, Wizard of Oz or something. Like this is all shit that people, some factions of Q QAnon believe. I mean, admittedly, the wacky factions, not all of them. And it's sort of like splintered a little bit because since Trump lost the election, there hasn't been a Q drop in like a year. Like basically, Trump loses the election, Q goes silent. That's it. It's sort of like Ron Watkins decided, okay, game over, right? And just decided to move on, but it was too late. It already turned into a fucking religion at that point. And now you're seeing like QAnon people do all this ridiculous shit. Like there was this thing I saw a little while ago where like a bunch of them went to Las Vegas, or not Las Vegas. They went to Dallas to DeLazy Plaza where like JFK was assassinated, and they were like waiting around there for like weeks at a time for JFK to come back, kind of like JFK is like the second coming of Jesus and shit to QAnon or something, and supposedly JFK was going to come back to life and show up in the Lazy Plaza and join Donald Trump in like, you know, ferreting out this like pedophile ring, which is like supposedly run by Tom Hanks or something. Like seriously, and there were like hundreds of people waiting there on on the fucking grassy knoll and shit, waiting for JFK to come back. And it was like JFK never came. And they just waited around and around. And I don't know, are there still people there? I mean, this was a few months ago. Like I heard that there were people waiting there for like fucking weeks. Like it's just beyond kooky. It's every like weird ass, stupid, crazy Christian conspiracy theory thing, but dialed up to 11 with an extra dose of batshit fuckery like mixed into it. You know what I mean? Sprinkled with crack on top. That's what it is. It's just so fucking bizarre. It's bizarre, fascinating, and scary at the same time. I don't know. Moving on.
Of the populations would end up affecting the timelines that we created as a species, almost like hijacking our co-creative abilities. And
Yeah, God, see, there's so much bullshit to unpack here. The timeline we created as a species. What the fuck is he talking about? A couple of things. Um, First thing he's talking about is the Mandela Effect. Have you ever heard of the Mandela Effect? The Mandela Effect is basically when people misremember things from their youth, and instead of going, oh, I didn't know it was like that, they make up a conspiracy where the timeline is actually changed and that somehow we're living in an alternate universe. That's the Mandela Effect. So, the Mandela Effect, it'll be something like people will like point out that the Bernstein Bears is actually spelled Berenstein Bears. Like you ever seen that? And then everybody goes, but I could have sworn it was Bernstein Bears, but it's really Berenstein Bear. And another one is like, oh, the Monopoly guy in the game Monopoly, like the little logo dude, like doesn't have a monocle, and it's like I could have sworn he had a monocle, you know. Or another one was where the reason why they call it Mandela Effect is because of what's his name, fucking Mandela, the president of South Africa, right? Everybody thought that he died. What's his first name? Is it Joseph Mandela? Um, Now I got to look that up. Now I'm not going to know, you know, I'm not going to be able to be satisfied unless I look up Mandela, South Africa. Nelson Mandela, that was his name, right? Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, there's this whole thing about how people thought that Nelson Mandela died in the 80s. And he really didn't die. He died not that long ago. I don't know exactly when, but yeah, and he actually became the president of South Africa for a little while, right? And the thing about it is that Nelson Mandela was in prison for like 20 years or something. And then he got released in like 1994 and he became the president of South Africa. And everybody was like, oh, I could have sworn that I heard that he died in prison. And really, what it is that they are mistaking Nelson Mandela for Steve Biko because Steve Biko was a civil rights leader in South Africa who actually died in prison, right? And the reason why they're mistaking that is because a movie came out in the 80s called Cry Freedom, which was back when, the South Africa was still under apartheid. and it was, this movie comes out, talks about the life of Steve Biko and how he like died a martyr. He's kind of like Steve Biko was like kind of like the South African version of, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., kind of sort of like the civil rights leader who, paved the way for huge social changes in South Africa and the eventual downfall of apartheid and all that. And people are mistaking him. They're mistaking Nelson Mandela for Stephen Biko because there was a movie in the 80s about Steve Biko. And the thing is that, that's what the Mandela Effect is. It's all, if you notice, the Mandela Effect is all about stuff that people remember when they were kids that is just, they just remember it wrong, you know? It's all things like that. It's like, oh, the Berenstain Bears are wrong. Oh, there's this logo to this company is wrong, you know, or something like that, or whatever. And it's never like big, huge, like important stuff. It's never like nobody ever remembers, like for example, you know, the United States being destroyed in a nuclear war or something. Nobody ever remembers something like that. No one ever remembers like, you know, huge giant differences that if you believe that the multiverse is really a thing and it's just like in Marvel comics or something where there's multiple universes with the same people that have different circumstances, right? If you actually believe that was real, then you would assume that they would be wildly different. It would be very rare to have one universe that was just like another one with only one little tiny difference in it. Oh, the only difference is the way this children's book is spelled. That doesn't seem to be very likely. It seems more like it would be like Marvel Comics, right? Where you would have huge giant differences where, you know, um, but that's not really what it is. It's really just people not remembering shit the right way and turning it into this like huge fucking conspiracy theory because it's, fun to think about. That's really what it is. That's what this guy's talking about. Even that has been worked into the QAnon conspiracy theory, where somehow travelers from a different universe have changed the past. This is not, I'm not making this up. This is actual real shit that they talk about, the real shit that they believe. Somehow, travelers from a different universe have changed the past, and that certain people remember it because they are holdovers from that prior timeline. And that's what he's talking about when he says timelines and time travel and interdimensional beings and shit like that. He's talking about, basically aliens that come from other universes and have changed the timeline, just like in Back to the Future. You know, that's another thing you'll notice too. A lot of this, especially when it comes to the people talk about aliens and shit, a lot of it is just stuff that comes right out of movies. Like literally they'll see some shit in a movie like The Matrix, right? And then they'll adopt it to to the conspiracy theory. They literally did that with The Matrix and the whole red pill thing and all that. And we're living in a simulation. That was literally taken right out of the fucking Matrix. I saw that. I remember that happening. I remember that movie came out in 1999 and shit. And then like people in like conspiracy theory forums and stuff back then started fucking adapting that language, and within a couple of years it was like we're living in a simulation was fucking like, you know, integrated into the mythology, into the conspiracy theory mythology, and now it is. Right? So this is how it fucking works. This is how like, it says a lot about religion and how religions form. Because this is really what we're witnessing right now is the birth of, like when it comes to QAnon and conspiracy theory stuff and the flat earth and NWO and all of that shit, we're really witnessing a birth of another religion. Give this 5,000 years, they'll have churches, or give it, not even 5,000 years, but a couple hundred years, they'll have churches and they'll have inquisitions and they'll have popes. The Pope of fucking QAnon. Definitely will. Anyway, moving on.
And that would determine the fate of humanity.
So what do you think the deep state wants for the fate of humanity? If they had their way and every sinister plot they are trying to arrange came true, what would our day-to-day life look like?
What they want is centralized power through corruption. They want to negate the three-branch checks and balances, three-branch government system, and maintain and expand the corrupt government bureaucracy. So they basically want no freedom, full totalitarian control. They want control and access to all of our biometric data, all of our medical records, all of our financial records, all of our personal data. They want to know all of it and control all of it. They want to make things like vaccine.
Yeah, if that's a thing you're afraid of, then I got bad news for you because that's already a thing. Information on you is not hidden or secret. Anybody, especially a government agency, can find anything they want about you. It just has to have a subpoena. They just have to go get a court order, right? And they can find your medical records. They can find your address, your educational records. They can find your biometric data. There's things like your biometric data. That shit isn't even secret. A company can basically collect that from you without even really telling you. You know what I mean? All they got to do is put it in the fucking terms of service that, hey, when you use your finger to unlock this cell phone, we're keeping that on file, and then we can sell that or share that with our partners, our business partners. And if you own a phone that has that and you signed off on it, then that's already happening, right? Your voice prints, things like that. You tell Alexa to search for a fucking bagel place or whatever. You know, you use Google, the Google voice search, right? Some phones you can go to Google Voice, and you can just talk into it and it'll go search shit for you. It's like Google is keeping track of all that shit, right? You know, because that's how they make their money. They make their money through, this is why everything that Google provides is free, because they make their money selling information about you. Can you use their services for free? And that's the payoff. That's why Gmail is free. That's why Google Maps is free. I personally don't really see that much of a problem with it. Not really. I mean, what are they going to do? What they use it for? They use it to create targeted advertising. And that's why, you ever go to search for something and you're thinking about something and maybe you talk to it with your friends or whatever. Oh, there was an episode of the Transformers where Optimus Prime fucking got down and sucked Megatron's dick or whatever. Oh, I got to go look that up. And then you go on Google and you type in Transformers and then that pops up before you even finish typing it. Transformers, and there's Megatron Optimus fellatio scene. Oh yeah, okay, right. It's because the algorithm is basically tracking what you search for, and the phone is fucking listening to you. Right? You ever see your phone just turn on, the screen just light up for a few seconds and then stop? It's listening to you. And it's not just them, it's not just Google, it's fucking Microsoft with the Xbox. That was a big deal when the Xbox came off because the Xbox has voice commands and stuff like that. And people were like, oh, privacy advocates, blah, 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 blah. All that shit went away when the games started coming out, you know? So it's sort of like this is, you want to avoid this stuff. I got news for you, man. It's too late. It's too late. But here's the thing, they're not using it to control people. They're not turning people into slaves. They're not using it to create fucking androids and shit that are gonna enslave humanity and all of that. No, they're using it to sell you things because that's really what it's really all about. It's not, there is no fucking conspiracy theory to take over the earth and turn everyone into slaves and blah. No, 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 no. The only conspiracy that's out there is to make money off of people. That's all. That's all it really is, and it's nothing to be really that afraid of. I mean, yes, there can be abuses of this type of information, obviously. You know, somebody, for example, selling your medical information to someone, that can be abused in a lot of different ways. For example, you try to go get a job someplace and you don't get hired. And it's why? Because they had on file that you had some kind of disease or whatever. and they didn't want to hire you because they knew you're going to be taking sick time off. That's actually like an example of shit that's actually really happened, right? Like people not getting hired because they have things like sickle cell anemia and shit like that. There are ways it can be abused, and there should be laws. We have to create laws in order to stop that kind of abuse. That's for sure. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, right? But what I am saying is that it's not a conspiracy to fucking like throw us all into concentration camps in Walmart and shit. Right? That's seriously. Anyway, moving on.
Mandatory. There's no body autonomy, no free choice. Chips in your hand.
Oh yeah. Also, I don't think if you heard it, I turned it off right there, but you heard the vaccine mandatory thing. Yep. Doesn't surprise me that this dude is a fucking COVID denier. This dude is a vaccine like anti-vaxxer. Just another example, folks, of how this stuff can be damaging to your health. Moving on.
Type of thing. Think like communist China, except in the United States and all over the world. That is what the deep state is looking to do. And somebody may say, well, that won't happen in the United States. And I would say to those people, well, how far are we from 2 weeks to stop the spread? I think that COVID is proof that the corruption that we're dealing with is not just in the United States, but that it's global. I mean, like, vaccines are together. It made perfect sense. It seemed to me that Trump was a part of something a lot bigger.
I scooped ahead a little bit. Sorry.
A lot of the time they occur around the same exact time.
Sorry.
Clinton couldn't get in. The point is that Q was like the next step, I think, in the intel drop, corrupt deep underground bases. And then there would be the FEMA camps or the concentration.
Okay, I totally skipped ahead. Where were we at? Hang on a second. Sorry about that. I clicked on it by accident.
It's for the fate of humanity. Like if they had their way in every
intelligence community, and the Q was involved with like things like the deep underground military bases and black budget technology bell inside of my heart.
Okay,
so
okay. Hang on. Sorry, folks.
Those people, well, how far are we from 2 weeks to stop the spread? I think that COVID is proof that the corruption that we're dealing with is not just in the United States, but that it's global. I mean, like, vaccines are being used as an excuse to do all sorts of things. I think it's only a matter of time before they're used to round up and detain enemies of the New World Order or of the deep state. I mean, this virus is only killing less than 1% of the population.
Yeah, so, sorry, I didn't mean to skip around there a lot. I clicked on it, and instead of stopping it, I actually accidentally skipped ahead. But I just wanted to point that out there, also a vaccine denier, he's also a COVID denier. Oh, it only kills 1% of the people, right? We are over 800,000 people dead just in this country, right? From the Rona, from the pandemic. There are 5 million people around the world dead. That's the official number. There are most likely way more than that, because we got to remember a lot of the countries out there that are in the middle of this pandemic don't have accurate counts. Places like Kenya and Algeria and shit like that. They don't have accurate counts because they don't have the infrastructure for it. They don't have the reporting. They don't have the ability to keep track the same way that we do. So this is why it's so high in the United States, by the way, right? And like if you were to actually look at like Uganda, for example, their official numbers are really low. It's because there's only like 5 hospitals in the entire country, right? In Uganda, and most of the people who are dying of it are dying of it from at home. They just never actually end up seeing a doctor. This is so it's most likely way higher in these places than they're letting on. It's definitely way higher in China than their official numbers. Of course, they've been really good about locking down and stuff, because in China they can just point a gun at you and force you to lock down, you know, right? So, benefits of living in a dictatorship, I guess, right? So yeah, it is really high, but see, here you go. Here's you know, this is what I meant when I said it could be harmful to your health to believe in this shit. You know what I mean? Like, according to him, yeah, the pandemic, it's all just there to control people, blah, 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 right? In the meantime, literally thousands of people are dying every freaking day. Like, let's look up right now Let's do coronavirus deaths. I've searched for it so many times it's like saved in my search history, right? And let's just look at the entire country. All time, just yesterday, here's coronavirus deaths here. Just go to Google, right? Let's make that bigger so you guys can see that, right? Just yesterday, according to Google, right? 2,969 people dead on January 25th, right? That's one day. One day, right? And that's the people that we know of. Those are the people that we know have been reported. It's not counting all the people who died at home and never got tested. It's not counting all the people who oh wait, that's the wrong. We want to move that out of the way here. Right. That's not counting all the people who were at home and, never like went to the doctor. That's not counting all the people who died because the hospital beds were full and they couldn't like get treatment for anything, right? That's just people who died in the hospital who were like tested that we know of. It's insane. It's insane. And then, but this guy sitting here saying that it's all a conspiracy. Oh, it's all there to control you. Like, you know, it's just, it's another weapon by the elites or whatever and it's no fucking wonder then when you have like half of the goddamn country who just refuse to get vaccinated and refuse to wear masks and refuse to lock down and refuse to do anything to even try to stop the spread of this disease. It's been 2 fucking years already. You would think by this point, 2 years have passed, that even the fucking like slow people would have gotten with the fucking program by now, right? You would think like after like maybe like 200,000 people died, that it would be undeniable that the shit kills people. That but you heard him say it himself here, right? Oh, it only kills 1% of the population, which is bullshit. It actually kills like 2.5, something like that. That's been pretty consistent through this whole thing. That actually only started going down when Omicron showed up. Omicron actually kills less people, but it spreads so much that more people are actually dying now because it's so fucking like contagious. And that's why the numbers are so high. It's like, think about, okay, if this is really only like, let's say it was 1%, like he said, right? Then that means like, if 2,000 people a day are dying from this shit and it has a 1% like mortality rate, then how many people are infected right now? How many millions of people is that if every fucking day 2,000 people are dying? I mean, absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You know, just goes to show once again that this is how bad this shit actually is. That it's literally leading to people dying because they're too fucking stupid to do something to stop like an easily preventable disease from spreading. This is how like insane our country has become. Moving on.
So I think that the ultimate end goal is to have a two-tiered slavery system where you have free-range slaves that are in the cities and they're being used as like workhorses to create a large generation of tax revenue for these black budget operations. And these people live in the cities. These people are monitored by like the deep underground bases, by these classified technologies. These people in these cities are basically like held hostage by the corrupt deep underground bases. And
All right, first off, all right, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Right? So, first off, the underground bases thing is a trope that is literally decades old. Okay. And it comes from some stories that were printed in the 1940s. Was it the 1940s? Early 1940s, in like the one of those weird magazine type things. Like you ever like, those weird story type pulpy type magazines, right? There was a number of stories that were printed about how, and supposedly they said the true story, right, of how this guy went into a cavern in the middle of the earth and encountered this like underground civilization of like basically like goblins is what they were. Like goblins or trolls or fairies or something, and I can't remember exactly the names that they used. It was like something like Daros or something like that. And supposedly these people underground that lived down there had machines, and these machines would cause trouble for the people who lived on the surface, you know. And it ultimately just was just a story that some people wrote. And there were people that, apparently one of the guys who like co-wrote it was like fucking schizophrenic or something and insisted the shit was real when it was not real, right? And it's just, that's where that originated. So that the whole like, because there's myths and legends and stuff of like underground cities, things like Shangri-La and stuff like that. And this is, but like the first modern sort of like iteration of this conspiracy theory comes from that. And then after World War II, Nazis get involved. So then you start hearing about secret underground Nazi bases. First off, there was a secret base, supposedly a base of Nazis in Antarctica, right? And there's this big conspiracy theory about a guy, like one of the generals, who took a, you know, um, military excursion after World War II to Antarctica in order to like fight these Nazis, and I can't remember his name. And then he had to come home and retreated because supposedly somehow the Nazis got their hands on fucking UFO technology or something, and they either built it themselves or they got it from a crashed ship or something like that, blah blah blah. Which kind of makes you think, well, if the Nazis had fucking UFOs in like 1948 and shit, you know, why did they allow the war to get? Why did they lose the war? If they had this stuff and they had it in such a way that they could like in such numbers and deployed in such a way that they could actually win battles with it, how come they never invaded the United States? How come they abandoned Germany and went to like you know South America and like fucking Antarctica and shit? Well, how come they wouldn't just like take over the world? I mean, they have the fucking technology, don't they? Right? That shit. This is the thing that never makes sense. It's like, oh, there's other stories about how the Nazis flew to the moon and all that, and have a secret moon base. But if they have a secret moon base and flying saucers that can like go faster than the speed of light and anti-gravity and all this other bullshit, then they should have been able to take over the Earth decades ago. But they never did. They never did. Why? Because it doesn't exist. That's why. Right? That's why. It's because it's all made up bullshit. There's no, and this is the other thing that he's like this dude even here, fucking Mr. Chansley, talking about how it's all a plan to take over. It's this plan to make people into slaves and blah 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 blah, and they have secret technology. Well, if they have the technology, if they have the manpower, if they have the will, if they control everything already, then what the fuck are they waiting for? Why don't they just turn us all into slaves? What do they need? Why would they need money anyway? Because this is what he just said right here. This is what he just said. He said that, you know, the people in the cities would be made slaves so that they can make money to fund these black budget like programs. That's exactly what he just said, right? Why would they need money if they control everything? If they're already in control and people are slaves, then what do they need slaves to make money with? Who are they buying shit from? Are they buying it from themselves? Right? I mean, they already control everything, don't they? Like, isn't the whole point of having slaves so that you don't have to pay them? So who's going to, why don't they just take what they need? If they have the technology and they already control everyone, why even bother with money? Why not, why all the secrecy? That's the other thing. It's like, what's with all the fucking secrecy and the codes and all of that shit? And like, putting secret codes inside of fucking like the Comet Pizza fucking emails and all that. What's the point of all that stuff? If it was actually true, how come they won't? How come they have to encode little Easter eggs and shit in their social media posts and stuff like that for, people to figure out? Like, why do any of that to begin with whatsoever? There's never an explanation for that because it goes against the narrative. Because if you actually think about it, if it was actually real, none of that would ever exist. It wouldn't happen. There would be no evidence. If this shit was actually real, think about it. If there were actually secret like fascist blood drinking like baby raping Nazis with fucking UFO technology if that shit actually existed, right? It's when you say it out loud, it's fucking hilarious. If that shit actually existed, and you would think they would do everything they could to keep it secret, right? So wouldn't that mean that they would shut down 4chan? It's like, oh, 4chan's onto us. We better shut it down. Well, they own everything, don't they? You know? So what, like somehow 4chan managed to get away from like, the evil clutches of the cabal there? Like they own everything. They own all of the media everywhere across the entire country except for the servers that 4chan is on? Like, are you serious? it's it it's just when you think about it for 2.5 seconds, it becomes so ridiculously idiotic, you know. And this is why these people they don't think. This is I don't know. I don't know. Moving on. Let's go on. Let's see. We're at 10:16. Let's watch a little bit more because we only managed to get 16 minutes in. And I at least want to finish. I at least want to get to where does Trump fit into this whole thing here before we move on. So let's go.
And then there would be the FEMA camps or the concentration camps, which, these things, believe it or not, may already exist. If you look into the way that certain Walmarts have been shut down and converted. I mean,
That was the thing. Okay. What he just talked about there, the FEMA camps inside Walmarts. Um, I actually remember this. I remember this thing here. That was, I think, around 2013 or so. It hit like it was a big conspiracy that a bunch of like basically what happened was because of the 2008 financial crisis, a bunch of Walmarts shut down because everybody was hurting and the Walmart like corporation was like losing money and shit. So they closed a bunch of their stores, right? And the thing is, the Walmart stores are, first off, they're huge, right? And secondly, they're all over the place. And so this conspiracy theory started that the Walmarts were actually like FEMA camps in disguise, right? And people were posting pictures of like, here's a Walmart parking lot and it's got barbed wire around it. How come it has barbed wire on it? And it's like, well, because they don't want people stealing the cars and shit that are there, right? And it's because, this Walmart's been shut down and they're storing crap inside of the fucking parking lot and they don't want people breaking in and stealing it. That's why there's barbed wire on it. Like there's barbed wire all over the place, especially when you go to like cities and stuff, like in the inner cities and shit. People put barbed wire around their parking lots because they don't want people breaking in and stealing stuff because of crime, you know? But it's just like this is just another example of like of how ordinary news events get integrated into the conspiracy. You know what I mean? Like this is an example of that. Because that's a thing that happens all the time too. You'll just hear like, and it'll be like an innocuous event that happens in the news. A celebrity died. That becomes part of the conspiracy theory, right? Oh, there's a hurricane in some country, down in South America. That becomes part of the conspiracy theory. Oh, there's wildfires in California. That becomes part of it. Oh, it's Jewish space lasers that are actually causing the wildfires. Shit like that. And it's really sort of like basically anything that hits the public consciousness. Anything from stories in the news to internet memes to popular movies to anything that happens basically gets integrated into the conspiracy theory. It's like, you know, it's really kind of I think that's one of the reasons why the shit's so widespread. Why so many people believe this stuff because it can basically be adapted to fucking fit anything. Anything that people are talking about at the moment, you know, gets gets worked into the conspiracy theory and it's all part of the plot by the NWO or whatever, by the fucking Jewish elites, in order to take over. It's like when the fuck are they going to take over? When are they going to stop like preparing like in Spaceballs when the guy's like, preparing, you're always preparing, just go. It's like, yeah, fucking Illuminati. Why are you guys preparing all the time? Just fucking like take over already. I don't know.
The same stuff we're talking about happened in Nazi Germany, it happened in the USSR, it happened and is happening right now in communist China.
So where does Trump fit into this whole thing?
Well, that's a good question. This whole idea of Pizzagate and the info that was dropped during Pizzagate was almost like a trial run. And it was conducted to disclose the truth to the public prior to the 2016 election. So the public knew what was really at stake, and people like Hillary Clinton couldn't get in. And the point is that Q was like the next step, I think, in the intel drops. And so after understanding what in the Q community is known as the Q clock, the way that the timestamps and the gap code work with the Q drops and how they all relate to Donald Trump's tweets and how there's a lot.
Did any of that make sense to you guys? Did any of that make sense? So you notice that when Andrew asks Mr. Chansley a direct question, he can't answer it. How does Donald Trump relate to all this? What is Donald Trump's role in all of this? Well, it has to do with the blah, 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 gish gallop, bullshit, bullshit. Right. He doesn't even know. Right? He doesn't even know how it, because once again, it's not about actual facts. It's not about actual knowledge. It's not about things that actually happened or actually knowing anything. It's all about just shit that makes you feel good. That's that's why. That's why he can't give a straight answer. Can he just say, "Oh, Donald Trump was supposed to be the guy that was supposed to uncover the conspiracy"? Blah 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 blah. No, he could have just, because it's not true. It's not true because he hasn't actually thought about that. Because no one's actually thought about, like, this is what Donald Trump's supposed to do. You know why? Because he didn't do it, right? And now they have to come up with some other bullshit reason. They have to come up with a justification as to why Donald Trump didn't do the shit they said he was supposed to do. you know. But if you actually were to do that, if you actually were to try to think about it and be like, hey, how come he didn't come through? Because Trump was supposed to be the guy that was going to uncover the baby Satan rape, the baby fucking blood drinking Satan rapists and shit. Trump didn't actually do it. If he actually had to square that fact in his fucking mind, it might actually cause an avalanche and fuck up his entire worldview. So he can't do it. He has to purposely deny himself that line of thinking. You know, he has to terminate that line of thinking. There was you ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? There's a part in I think it's the third book, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, where Arthur Dent is um I can't remember exactly, but there's a line where he says, that would be almost as ridiculous, and then it says Arthur Dent terminated that line of thinking. Most of the things that he thought were ridiculous have already actually happened. like that's what would happen. It would cause him to reassess his fucking ridiculous beliefs, and all of it might come crashing fucking down. And he doesn't want to do that because it's not, this is all about his identity at this point. It's like he has too much invested in it. The sunk cost kind of fallacy, right? You know, too much time and money wasted on this shit. Can't just fucking give it up now. There's got to be something to it. So, moving on.
A lot of the same verbiage in the tweets as well as in the drops, and they all, a lot of the time, they occur around the same exact time. And the way that certain messages are put out, in time or in lockstep with his tweets and all that stuff, they were using numbers to communicate a much larger and broader message that if you put the puzzle pieces together, it made perfect sense. It seemed to me that Trump was a part of something a lot bigger. That Trump being at the helm in the presidency, he was a part of this faction within the military-industrial complex, within the quote-unquote deep state, the good guys that were trying to free humanity, and they were trying to get rid of this cabal that is essentially full of Marxists, fascists, and New World Order types that are trying.
So first off, there, Marxists and fascists and New World Order types. So Marxists and fascists are diametrically opposed to each other. They're the opposite almost. They're on the complete different sides of the political spectrum. You can't be a fascist and a Marxist at the same time. Shit's just not compatible, right? So, you know, that's the first thing. So yeah, when the guy's telling you I research, remember he said that he researched all of this shit. No, he didn't research a goddamn thing. He's basically spreading conservative fucking propaganda. That's the first thing. You know, secondly, it's like I said, how come Trump didn't fucking come through? You know? Like, oh, okay, Donald Trump was supposed to do all this shit. Well, how come he didn't fucking do it? Like, and that's what really gets me. And I've said this before in prior streams, you know, but it bears repeating. Of all of the people out there for a cult to form around, a cult which is like nearly like, it's very much like one step above below a religion at this point, you know, of all the people, like these people, they fucking chose Donald Trump to be their savior. It's like that's what really blows me away the most, you know, like I can't understand that shit. Why Donald Trump? I mean, if there was anybody out there who was like more like such obviously not in doesn't give a fuck about you, it's Donald Trump. You know what I mean? Like Donald Trump obviously doesn't fucking care about these people. He obviously is like the complete opposite of what they believe, right? I mean, he's obviously a bullshit. Like if anybody can't tell Donald Trump is a fucking bullshit merchant within 5 minutes of like hearing the man speak, then you've got a problem. Like it's like the most like I don't understand. That's what I really don't understand. I really don't understand like how anybody could like latch onto that fucking guy. Be like, oh, this is my new Jesus right here, Donald Trump. That's the real mystery to me. Like be a little more fucking discerning about who you choose to follow, I guess. Right? It's like, oh, I should know, like in Life of Brian, like I know a Messiah when I see one. I've followed a few. It's just unbelievable. So,
Washington's
Lewis the Hedgehog, thanks for joining, man. How you doing?
enslaved the population. So Trump, he was tough on China, he was tough on Russia, he was tough on Iran. He was trying to create peace in the Middle East. He released the JFK.
Yeah, Donald Trump was, tough on Iran because he wanted to undo Obama's legacy. He took a perfectly good peace treaty and fucked it all up. Donald Trump also created let's not forget what actually happened with Donald Trump here. Donald Trump also like started an unnecessary trade war with China, cost American farmers billions upon billions of dollars. We're still feeling the ramifications of that shit even now that he's out of office. We're still kind of dealing with that. You know, that's part of the reason why the economy was so fucking shitty even before the pandemic hit because Donald Trump's stupid ass fucking trade war, right? Donald Trump, like, basically took America's standing on the world stage and took a giant piss all over it. And the world is a much worse place because of what Donald Trump did. So let's not forget any of that. And then the secret JFK shit, yeah, nothing came out. Nothing of worth came out from the JFK files because of the shit that Donald Trump. In fact, I don't even think Donald Trump actually released anything from JFK. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. But certainly didn't release any secret fucking files that proved any conspiracy theory. I'll tell you that.
File. He created the Space Force. There was also during the Trump administration, there was a declassification of a zero-point energy engine and inertial propulsion or anti-gravity craft.
No, there wasn't. No, there was not. There was a research that came out that they were researching a thing called a supposed anti-gravity device that used what's called the Pius effect, and it turned out that the Navy basically said that it didn't exist and it didn't work. So there was no declassification of an anti-gravity device. That's not true. The United States government does not have a flying saucer that we know of, and if they do, no proof of it came out. Donald Trump did not declassify anti-gravity. That is not true. Of course, he would have known that if he actually did some actual real research and not just read some shit that he saw on Facebook or something. Let's not forget, this guy doesn't actually research anything. If he actually researched this stuff, he would know that it was bullshit. Moving on.
That the Navy put out there. Okay, I'll put it this way. Q is the only major movement in history, as far as I can tell, that is working to disclose the full truth about, say, government special access programs, top secret information and technologies, the truth about things like aliens or interdimensional beings and their role here on the planet. They're the only ones that this movement was the only portion of any sort of campaign that I've seen in history that is talking about like the breakaway civilization that has been created in these deep underground military bases.
Um, Seriously, like, the more this guy talks, the more ridiculous it becomes, It was kind of almost at the beginning of this when he was just talking about shamanism and shit. It's like, okay, you could almost sort of believe, all right, I can see why somebody would fall for this stuff, right? But now he's just kind of gone off on like, ridiculous, just wacky banana sandwiches left field here. And and I mean, the thing is, all right, this shit makes sense to me because I actually have taken time to read about this stuff and I kind of have an idea of what this dude is saying, right? I don't know. Do any of you people out there, does this actually make sense to you guys? I don't know if you guys are you into this conspiracy theory stuff the same way I am, Like, are you able, I mean, is it something that like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think like the average person could follow half of the shit that this guy's saying. And I'm just like thinking about how ridiculous and wacky it all is. And it kind of makes me think like I wonder if during his trial he tried to like speak about any of this stuff. Like, you know. I mean like I wonder if he like thinks about any of this shit like I wonder if like any of this stuff came up while he was like in the fucking like courtroom and what the jury was thinking. It's like, yeah, no wonder you got fucking 4 years, man. You're lucky they didn't give you fucking 20. Lucky they didn't commit you to a goddamn like, loony bin and shit. So, anyway,
It's the only movement that is disclosing the truth about things like looking glass technology, the anti-gravity technology or inertia.
Looking Glass technology is literally portals. Like in Rick and Morty. That's what that is. You know. Remember, he thinks that everybody, he thinks the government has all this. He thinks the government has spaceships and that they have, you know, wormhole portals that they can teleport to Mars with, and that they've been in touch with aliens, and they either developed this stuff from like, Nazi scientists developed it, or like fucking aliens, they got it from back engineered aliens or whatever, and that there's like, warp drive and artificial gravity and all, anti-gravity and all this shit. He thinks that the government, the breakaway underground bases, the secret, breakaway civilization actually has all of this stuff. He thinks all of that. And they still, though, have to like steal an election in order to like seize power. Like, one of these things doesn't compute. If you had like, let's just say the Enterprise, because that's what he's really describing is like basically the USS Enterprise. Imagine that, warp drive, phasers, photon torpedoes, right? Fucking teleporters, all that shit. If you had the Enterprise, shields, right? You could take over the Earth. You could just fly above each city, and they'd try to shoot missiles at you, and you could just phaser the missiles up, or the missiles would just hit like your shields and just they wouldn't do anything, right? And you could just basically photon torpedo every city until mankind capitulates, right? There's even an episode of Enterprise. I don't know if you guys ever watched Star Trek, but the Enterprise show, the one that nobody liked, the one that came out with like fucking the guy from Quantum Leap as the captain. There was even an episode of that show where that exact same thing happens. Somebody steals the Enterprise, and the alternate bad guy universe where everybody has a mustache, they steal the Enterprise and they take over the Earth with it, right? So this guy thinks they actually have all that stuff. Why would they need to fake an election in order to get rid of Donald Trump? How does that make sense, right? Why would they need to steal an election? Why would they just not beam Donald Trump up and put him in, beam him straight into space and kill him? Why would they just not do that? Or why would they just not teleport him right out of the fucking like White House and then just shoot him in the head and then fucking come down and be like, "Hey, we're taking over the Earth, and anybody who doesn't agree, we're just gonna teleport them. We're just gonna beam them up and then like teleport them straight into the surface of the sun or something." Do you know what I mean? Like you could literally take over the Earth and nobody would be able to do shit to you if you had the Enterprise. So what's the problem? Why didn't they just not take over? What's with all the trickery? What's with all of the fucking like, secret codes and messages and shit? How come they have to, and how come QAnon is able to expose all of this stuff, and the people on the Enterprise with their technology that's 500 years ahead of everybody wouldn't be able to stop it? Shouldn't they be able to just like, you know, beam the computer away out of fucking out of QAnon's hands or something? Shouldn't they be able to create some kind of like computer virus that goes through and destroys all the information? I mean, they have the technology, don't they? Why don't they just do it? What's the problem? What are people going to fucking do? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's the stupidest shit. Oh my god. Anyway, damn it. We only got 20 minutes into this. It's 44 minutes long. But I want to read some comments. I want to keep going, but I have to work tomorrow morning. So I got to stop and it's already 10:37. So but let's read some more comments here before we end this. Let's turn off the thing. Maybe we'll continue on because the rest of this is actually pretty good. I mean, let's look at some of the other sections here. Where does Trump fit in? This is blood libel and anti-Semitism. That's a good one. QAnon, the storm, what happens? Was Q a psyop? That's as far as I got. I haven't actually seen the end. Should Trump have done more? Media portrayal of Q, what everyone should do to affect change. What do you think about the violent elements that use the QAnon? Blah, blah, blah. So there is a lot of other stuff. And then I think he even like sings at the end here, you know. Oh, yeah. And then this section here. I can't believe your lawyer said you were retarded. That's what it says. Okay. That's not me using the R slur. It actually says, I can't believe your lawyer said you were retarded. This is at the end. So, I recommend watching the rest of this. Maybe we'll come back to it, maybe not. But let's read some comments here before we end this here. All right, let me just turn that off for now. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? Let's see. Okay, in Shoma, conspiracists also believe wild BS is deep-seated coping mechanism. It's way easier to believe in Satanists and reptoids than the truth that you're poor like everyone else. And the politicians and their donors on both sides will screw you over regardless of how much you look like them or more so vote for them. Definitely true. Definitely true. There is also, yes, you're right, because what one of the things that ends up happening when you're a big time conspiracy theorist kind of guy is you start kind of getting a hero complex a little bit, you know? You start getting that idea. It's like, oh, well, I know the super secret information, right? And it's up to me and people like me. We're saving the earth by spreading this information around. Even though you're never really actually doing anything, all you're doing is just like, watching YouTube videos and watching Alex Jones and reading books that he sells and shit like that. That's all you're really doing. And then maybe like harassing people at a fucking like, at a fucking like school board meeting or something. But you kind of get this, you're right. You kind of get this sort of hero complex going in your head that it's up to me to like save the earth and shit. And it kind of reminds me like Um, in Steven Universe, anybody ever watch Steven Universe? Right. It's a great show. There is a character named Fryman who has like these weird sort of French fry looking dreadlocks, and he's like a character that is basically a conspiracy guy, and they're sort of making fun of conspiracy theorists with this character. And there's a quote that Pearl says where she says like something to the effect of, people have short, meaningless lives, and they want to, blame everything on an enemy they can fight. Right? Let me see if I can find that quote. It was actually like pretty spot on. Let's see. Steven Universe Pearl conspiracy quote. What did she say? Here we go. It is humans live short. Wait. Right. Let's see. Here we go. This is the quote. Humans live short, boring, insignificant lives so they can make up stories to feel like they're part of something bigger. They want to blame all the world's problems on some single enemy they can fight instead of a complex network of interrelated forces beyond anyone's control. And then, Amethyst turns around and says it's really quite sad. So that's essentially it in a nutshell. If you've never seen Steven Universe, you guys definitely watch Steven Universe. It's really awesome. It's also incredibly gay. It's like the gayest show ever. But it's really good. Um, let's see here. Okay, another from Inshoma. There's always a secret intelligent antagonist in these narratives and never just a natural phenomenon being a natural phenomenon. Even Bigfoot sightings end up having some villainous agents involved. Um, yeah, I've heard that angle too, where like, you know, yeah, like every um disaster has to have a cause, hurricanes can't just be hurricanes. It has to be Obama testing the HARP weather system or some shit like that. Wildfire can't be a wildfire. It's got to be like Jewish space lasers. Um, I have read some things about how some people think Bigfoot is like a fourth dimensional entity or something, and that's why nobody can ever get a picture of him. Just instead of taking the logical assumption that's like, well, Bigfoot doesn't exist because there's no evidence, right? It's kind of like, they make up this ridiculous explanation because that's what actually fits with their narrative. And don't get me wrong, folks, right? Nobody wants Bigfoot to be real more than me, right? Seriously, nobody wants the Loch Ness monster to be real more than I do. That would be the coolest thing ever. If they actually found a dinosaur that was alive today, like a real life fucking kaiju and shit, that would be the best thing ever, right? Nobody wants aliens to be real more than me. Well, I think it's pretty much, aliens are real, but we just don't have any evidence. I mean, it's obvious to assume that the rest of the universe being, you know, how vast it actually is and the number of planets we found, that there are definitely other planets out there with life on them, but nobody, like, let's just put it this way, like, the evidence of aliens actually visiting the Earth is very scant. You know, Out of all of the conspiracy shit, that's probably the thing that has the most evidence is, aliens, right? Like UFOs, because there actually are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of UFO like photos and videos and stuff. It's just none of them are conclusive because they could be anything. It's like the vast majority of them are just some weird lights in the sky. And even though it's like, yes, it's obviously, even if it's not fake, right? Which that's another thing that you always have to consider nowadays, that everyone in the world has a fucking computer that 20 years ago would have cost $1 million. And they could do like Hollywood level special effects and shit on it from their fucking bedroom. We can't take stuff like that at face value anymore. You have to actually investigate and see if it's actually real or not. Case in point for that, Skinny Bob. Any of you guys ever heard of Skinny Bob? Skinny Bob is a very convincing looking, let's remove that. Skinny Bob is a very convincing looking UFO or series of photos and videos, right? Let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna pull it up here, right? Images. If you've ever actually seen Skinny Bob, let's just put this back over here. Let me turn on my laptop window. This is basically what Skinny Bob is. There's some videos of this alien right here, right? It's actually very convincing. It actually looks really good. This one right here, though, this video here, see, you can kind of see it. Doesn't look half bad, right? You know, it's got movements here and stuff like that, and details in the clothes and all this shit, right? Looks like it could actually be real stuff, you know, and there's a different frames of like, you know, this spaceship blowing up and all of this other stuff, and then like Skinny Bob and his friends, like a couple of different aliens, right? Skinny Bob is a hoax. We know it's a hoax because they did some basically they uncovered like whoever created Skinny Bob used a off the shelf filter to add grain to the film. He used a font that was created by Microsoft for the time code at the bottom of the thing. It's definitely, you know, not real, right? It's a high quality hoax, right? But it's not anything that somebody couldn't have done from their home computer. There's an entire uh I guess subculture of people dedicated to Skinny Bob who think that the shit's real. Even after it was proved conclusively that the filters were applied to it, that the fonts were applied to it, that you know, all of these different effects that people can do from things like After Effects, you know, all these different things were made it to make it look old and all that. And even after all of that, there's still people that think the shit's real. And that just really kind of goes to show how deep someone's belief will go. Like, even when they're confronted with absolute proof that demonstrates the opposite, they'll still hang on to their belief. And this is very much why this shit is like a religion. This is why I keep bringing up, I keep comparing conspiracy theories to a religion, because this is what you do when you believe in a religion. When you get information that contradicts your religion, you toss out that information. If it conflicts with your faith, you know, something like evolution, for example, right? That conflicts with your faith. So what do? They toss out evolution. Same shit that happens here. And you know, it's fascinating, and that's like I said, there's nobody out there that wants aliens to be real more than me. I want Skinny Bob to be real, right? But you know, if you just ignore like the evidence, then you're just bullshitting yourself. And it's like, no, like, you know, you know, like you can't just turn off, you know, it's wrong to just turn off your brain and not pay attention to, you know, because then you're just fooling yourself. You know what I mean? If you just don't pay attention to the shit that doesn't like match up with your worldview, if you deny facts because it doesn't like fit your narrative, then the only person you're really lying to is yourself, right? So, and that can lead to dangerous shit. It can lead to you ending up in prison, like fucking Jacob Chansley. Anyway, uh, okay, man, I gotta get going here. I gotta get going. It's almost 11. I gotta wake up at like fucking 7 o'clock. So anyway, guys, I really appreciate you all joining me on this Wednesday. Um, I maybe want to try to make this part of you know, a usual thing, right? Because there's always a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, and just talking like just having one stream per week is like, you know, you can't always cover all the things you want to talk about. Lots of stuff happens during the, you know, lots of stories come out during the week and stuff like that that I usually want to touch on. And so I'm thinking that's what I'll use this Wednesday stream for. Like maybe the streams on Saturday will be a little more formal, and I'll have an actual subject that I'm gonna like adhere to and like stuff like that. And then maybe like the ones on Wednesday will be more just open and maybe we'll talk about stuff like this. We'll review videos or something, and it'll be a little more loose. That sounds like it could be a good little format, right? Anyway, guys, I do want to get going here, so let me give you my ending speech before we hang it up for the night. So, if you guys like what I do and you want to see more of my work, I have a DeviantArt site here that you can all go and visit, see more of my artwork, right? That's at deviantart.com. I have a webcomic. It's got ninjas, it has demons and monsters, it has people getting kicked in the face, and stuff like that. That's at halanja.com. If you like what I do and you want to give me money, you can go check me out on my Etsy shop. I sell prints, stuff like that. So if you support me, if you like what I do and you want to support me, whatever, you can buy stuff on my Etsy shop. And if you want to see me talk about things that are not related to politics, if you want to see me talk about toys and video games and stuff like that, you can check me out on UCD videos. So anyway, guys, thank you all so much. Uh, Thank you, of course, Lewis the Hedgehog. Great to see you. Thank you, and Shoma. Always cool. Thank you, Chupacabra. Really appreciate that. Dynacat. Thank you for joining also. Pony Throat. Great to see you. Kunga Dorhi. Thank you for joining too. I've never seen you before, so I really appreciate you coming, Kungadori. Appreciate that. You guys are great. I will be back on this Saturday at 11. I'm not really sure what we're going to talk about just yet, but I don't know. We'll figure it out. If any of you guys have any suggestions about videos you would like me to make, a subject that you would like me to speak about, fire them away, and I will, take it under advisement. Anyway, guys, I am out of here. I am tired and I need to go to sleep. So, adios.